system of government today. When you're ready, you may begin.
In Federalist 51, James Madison claimed, "In framing a government which is to be administered by men over men, the great difficulty lies in this. You must first enable the government to control the governed, and in the next place oblige it to control itself." In essence, a constitutional government must promote the classical Republican idea of general welfare, while at the same time having limitations to protect natural rights.
The fundamental characteristics of a constitutional government are that it establishes an uncodified or codified structure of law and results from the consent of the governed. The United Kingdom's uncodified constitution is based on judicial precedents as well as British common law. For example, the Magna Carta carries on the British tradition that a man's house is his castle, known as the Castle Doctrine, which provided the basis for individual rights to privacy. This later influenced the English court decision of Entick versus Carrington, which set the precedence that intrusion of private property is trespassing.
In a codified constitution, however, such as that of the United States, all powers are expressed or implied in one document. For either structure of government to exist, consent of the governed is necessary. According to John Locke's Second Treatise of Government, in all governments, the governed enter into a social contract with their rulers. To enact this contract, Article 7 outlined the procedure for the ratification of the Constitution.
By creating higher law and providing for a separation of powers, a constitutional government becomes limited. Higher law exists to ensure that all constituents, regardless of social class, follow the law of the land. In the 39th article of the Magna Carta, the rule of law was developed and was enforced on all British subjects. Rule of law constitutes higher law. The Supremacy Clause of the American Constitution states, "This Constitution and the laws of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land." Thus, every individual and institution in the United States must abide by federal law.
In the spirit of laws, Baron de Montesquieu asserts that without separation of governmental powers, there is no liberty. Federalist 47 carries this idea into state governments. By dividing power, it is less likely to be abused by one individual. This idea can be extended to incorporate checks and balances among governmental branches to prevent the abuse and misuse of governmental power by one branch.
Provisions in the Constitution provide guidelines for the central government so that power can be used moderately to make, execute, and justify laws, while also providing for the interest of the public. For example, the Commander-in-Chief Clause and the Wars Powers Clause allows the executive and legislative branches to check each other's military power. With the War Powers Resolution of 1973, Congress tried to redeem its power, but this measure has been ignored until September of this year, when President Barack Obama asked Congress for approval for a military strike in Syria.
In addition, there are checks on state power by the privileges and immunities, the due process, and the equal protection clauses of the 14th Amendment. The interpretation of the privileges and immunities provision has been recently challenged in the court case Crawford versus Marion County on the subject of the legality of voter IDs. Lastly, Article 1, Section 2, Clause 1, and Section 3, Clause 1 set the term of office for United States congressmen. This provision keeps Congress members' intentions focused on their constituents' interests because it is the constituents that re-elect them. However, in the government shutdown of October 2013, congressmen only followed their constituents and made decisions best for their re-election, not best for the country as a whole.
With the consent of the people, the fundamental characteristics of a constitutional government create structure. Adding provisions into the Constitution can create a limited government and provide for the protection of natural rights and general welfare.